Let's talk about some of the sneaky games in college football. And when I say sneaky games, I'm not talking about games that could, be featured for College Game Day or be Big Noon Kick. I'm talking about those games that you're flipping the channels on a Saturday afternoon and you're like, oh, wait, that game's actually close in the third quarter. Oh, wait a second. How close is that game? 3 points? We got Duke and Clemson going back and forth in the fourth quarter. Like, that's the kind of game I want to make sure we're out in front of, because there's so many big-time matchups. Sometimes these games will fall by the wayside. And so without further ado, I'm going to just talk about some of the big-time games within the first month of the season. We could go throughout the whole length of the season, and we'd probably take up a whole show if we were to do that. But even so, I think these first 4 weeks in themselves have 4 elite games that I think are going to make for phenomenal television and will remind us how much we missed college football. And the first week of the season, like I've mentioned a couple times here on this live show so far, we got Clemson at Duke. Now, this may be a little bit less sneaky because it's going to be the only game that day. It's on a Monday. It's week 1 of the college football season. But if you look at this one, it's, again, at Duke is Clemson, but Clemson is favored by 11.5. And the reason why I think this game is so sneaky is because we all have talked so much about Dabo Swinney and Cade Klubnik and how they're going to revamp the offense, and I think that's true, but all of us think we really know something about this game. We really think that we have this game figured out. And I'm here to just say, transparently, we don't know who Cade Klubnik is. And I'm not insinuating that he's going to have a poor performance or that he's not going to be that guy or not be a version of what we saw against North Carolina. But I just think we need to make sure we pump the brakes a little bit and understand we have not seen this kid in a 12-game slate. We haven't. And the 2 data points we have on him, we have one really good data point against North Carolina where he absolutely took the game over, provided a huge spark to that offense, was clearly the better quarterback for Clemson in that game and the guy to lead them forward. But we also saw him against Tennessee, and he kind of looked a little bit lackluster. And it was a huge spot for him. Didn't have a ton of help. Still threw for a lot of yards. I mean, had a couple interceptions. But even so, we know a lot of things about Cade Klubnik. We know he was a 5-star out of high school. We know he won a state championship. We get all that. But I want to call our attention back to our first impression of DJ Uiagalelei. Y'all, I was fully bought in to DJU as a starting quarterback at Clemson. 100% bought in. You want to know why? Because he showed me that he has it under the hood when he went into South Bend, Indiana, and absolutely balled against Notre Dame. Now, they lost the game, but DJU put up video game kind of numbers. And we all watched that game. We saw DJU. We took a step back and said, yeah, you know what? Clemson's probably going to be okay at quarterback. He was a 5-star guy out of high school, played at a powerhouse in St. John Bosco in California. Everything pointed toward DJU being the next great one at Clemson. And again, I'm a big DJU guy. I think he's going to be phenomenal at Oregon State. I think there were other things at Clemson that kept him from being as successful as he could have been at Clemson. But even so, that was the game that we were all bought into him. Small sample size, same deal with Cade Klubnik. Small sample size, but we saw enough of a flash to say, okay, we know Cade Klubnik. We know Clemson. And y'all, to be real, this is a game that could be very, very interesting, very, very sneaky, which is why we're doing this segment, because Duke, as much of a basketball school as people want to talk about them being, they play really good football. Duke was a really good football team last year. This is the first game, so there's already some sneakiness baked in there. It takes a while for, a new quarterback and offensive coordinator to mesh at Clemson. But they have over half the production, does Duke's defense from a season ago, returning, that allowed 22 points a game. So they should be good defensively. Also, they have the best quarterback in the country, according to NFL draft scouts, not named Caleb Williams and Drake May. Riley Leonard lit it up at the Manning Passing Academy. We had a lot of people there from the On3 network that said the dude was just dealing, tons of physical tools. It's also at home for Duke. It's at home. It's on a Monday, and y'all, we all understand this. Weird things happen in college football games that aren't played on Saturdays. There's no way to explain it. There's no science behind it. It's just a fact of life. Weird things happen when you don't play on a Saturday. Ask teams that get upset on a Friday night or on a Thursday. How often do we see that happen? I'm not saying this is going to be an upset. I'm not saying Clemson shouldn't win the game. I'm not saying we're not going to take Clemson to win the game. But when you look at this one, I think there is much more to it than what we're all just assuming is going to happen with Clemson and Duke. So keep an eye on that one. Weird game, sneaky game. Do not be surprised if you get to the third quarter and it's Duke up by 4 points, 3 points, and you're saying, well, okay, Clemson's got to put it together here. They got to put their foot on the pedal and find a way to score some points here because they started out sluggish. That Duke defense has their number. Do not be surprised if that ends up happening in this game. Would not surprise me in the slightest, but Clemson obviously has the better roster, so we'll see what happens there. Appreciate everybody tuned in live now. Make sure you like the video. If everyone could hit the thumbs up under the video right now, we will be well over 100 likes. So it's just my request to you. We appreciate you in advance for that, and I have all the confidence in the world that y'all make that happen. So just our consistent call to action to all y'all that are tuned in live. So thank you in advance for making that happen. Now, we move to week 2, and we have Oregon at Texas Tech as the next sneaky game on the schedule here. And this is going to potentially even be a ranked matchup. But the reason why it's sneaky, the same day as Oregon at Texas Tech, you got Texas at Bama. And that'll have college football playoff implications, and you got Quinn Ewers going on the road, and they almost, took them down a season ago in Austin. So there's a lot of buzz around that game. That's going to get all the spotlight. But this game right here, I'm telling you, this is going to be some good football being played. First of all, Oregon going to Lubbock, tough place to play. Pretty straightforward there. New offensive coordinator for Oregon. A lot of praise was given to Bo Nix last year. We're going to find out how much of that was attached to what Kenny Dillingham did for him offensively. Willie Stein now calling the offense. And when it's early in the season, again, it might take a second to get this whole thing to mesh. I'm not even saying it's going to be a similar scheme to what you saw last year for Oregon. But I just think when you have a new OC, you cannot just automatically have blind faith that it's going to be the exact same result. So if Oregon kind of sputters out of the gate and it takes them some time to get rolling, that would not surprise me. Also, Texas Tech offensively, I don't know if they get enough credit because they're in Lubbock, Texas, but Zach Kittley is going to be a head coach here very, very soon. I wholeheartedly believe that. Dude just draws up touchdowns. He's a Hogwarts grad. They have 75% of the offense coming back from last year that scored over 30 points a game. And they spread them out. They throw the ball around. Yes, that's true, but they're also balanced. I mean, Taj Brooks is 5'10", 230. He's a bowling ball of butcher knives coming at you downhill. Averaged 5 yards a carry last year. Tyler Shuck, the quarterback for Texas Tech, we told you they're going to spread them out. They're going to throw it around. It's personal for him. He transferred from Oregon at one point in time. You don't think he would love to take Oregon's playoff hopes down just a notch? Have a hard time believing he won it. And when we look at Oregon's secondary, they've done some things to try and improve that secondary, but last year they really struggled against this kind of offense now. I mean, I go back to that game against Washington where Michael Penix Jr. just did pretty much whatever he wanted against the Oregon secondary. Was not pretty. Was not pretty by any stretch of the imagination. It'll be the same kind of offensive attack from Zach Kittley and company. Oregon allowed 270 pass yards a game last year. Needless to say, that cannot happen if they want to get out of Lubbock with a dub. Now, if Oregon were to drop this game, the ramifications on their college football playoff hopes would be enormous. Because you drop game 2 to Texas Tech, you're staring down the barrel of still having to go to Washington. You got to go to Utah. Then you play USC and Oregon State still on the schedule. You got to go 4-0 against that stretch. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying that is not the situation you want to find yourselves in week 2 of the college football season. So this game, with what Joey McGuire has rolling there at Texas Tech, the culture he has in place, the belief he has in place there for the Red Raiders, I'm just saying, keep an eye on this game. I would not be surprised at all if Texas Tech were to handle business and win that game. Not a prediction, but I am saying this is a sneaky good college football game. I would make sure we're tuned into that one because you know that yours truly will be. And a lot of y'all that watch the show, you're just great college football fans in general, so I'm sure you will be. But we just had to address what's going on under the hood there in Lubbock in that game. Now, we're going to stay in week 2, and this is probably first team all sneaky when you're looking at the first month of the college football season. You got Notre Dame going to NC State. And wouldn't you know it, it's just a nice little noon kick for the good people at NC State. And Notre Dame are going to have 1,000% the better roster. You got Sam Hartman playing quarterback. You bring back a lot on defense, bring back a lot on that offensive line and the running back room. Like, they should have a favor in this, they should be favored in this game. It would do them a favor to be favored in this game, if you will. But for Notre Dame, this is going to be their first real test. Prior to this game, they go overseas and play Navy in Dublin, Ireland. I wonder and hope that Conor McGregor and Bono will both be in attendance. Nothing confirmed, but that's my hope. Then you go and play Tennessee State, and then you play NC State. So no knock on Navy, no knock on Tennessee State, but NC State will bring a very different vibe to the table here. This will be a very different kind of atmosphere as well for Notre Dame. And we all understand here that sleepy noon kick, you kind of wander in there, Notre Dame probably 2-0. But here's the real thing that I'm watching in this game. Brennan Armstrong transferring from Virginia and is now reunited with his former offensive coordinator, Robert Anae. And you say, why is this important? Well, Brennan Armstrong and Robert Anae, when they were at Virginia, they produced more fireworks than a bad 8th grader behind the middle school on 4th of July. Like, they were popping off. Over 40 total touchdowns for Brennan Armstrong in that season. If you remember correctly now, rewind the tape, Brennan Armstrong was on a lot of people's sleeper Heisman list heading into 2022. Like, that was the kind of buzz around him. And then you lose your OC, and Brennan Armstrong is just a totally different version of what we've seen from him. But if Robert Anae and Brennan Armstrong can recreate that magic and do score a lot of points, well, guess what? That puts pressure on Notre Dame to answer scores, and that puts a lot of pressure specifically on that wide receiver room of Notre Dame that is really very much so unproven. And this is a game where if you see NC State in the realm of scoring like 35 points, 38 points, that's a game that you're flipping through the ticker and you see, whoa. NC State's up how much on Notre Dame? They're up by 10 going into the fourth quarter. That's going to put some pressure now on that Notre Dame offense to be more explosive. That's why you brought Sam Hartman to South Bend, but it's not something they've consistently done at Notre Dame. And that receiver room would have to be able to create explosive plays, and I don't know how that looks for Notre Dame. I truly don't. So there's a path there for NC State to make that thing very interesting. You would imagine they're a home dog, sleepy kick. Going to be a very, very good football game. Circle that one. Make sure you got that one DVR'd if you're not watching live. Now, week 4 is where I want to finish right here. And this has the recipe for maybe the most intrigue of any of these games. Because you got UTSA going to Tennessee. A lot of people, too, right now have UTSA as a ranked football team in the preseason. Just so we're all on the same page here. You probably already knew that, but just making sure other people that are new to the program or don't follow UTSA as closely, make sure we're on the same page there. Now, I want to make this extremely clear. Tennessee has the better roster. Tennessee should win this game. Tennessee will be favored in this game. Maybe by double digits. We'll see what happens. But for Tennessee, they play the week before at Florida. That'll be an enormous game. Heck, could be a college game day kind of atmosphere. You'll be in the swamp. And if Tennessee wins that football game, like Joe Milton has implied they will win that football game, he said straight up, I don't lose in Florida. I love that he said that personally. That would be their first time winning in the swamp in 20 years, since 2003. So what does that mean for this UTSA game? If they come off that game having beat Florida, that is an enormous letdown spot. Enormous letdown spot. And for UTSA, they got a quarterback named Frank Harris, who is the best player in the country that nobody's talking about, that nobody's probably even heard of. Put up over 4,000 yards passing last year, over 40 total touchdowns. Dude can absolutely deal the pill like a shady pharmacist, as you know we like to say on this show. Dude can play some football now. What do we know about Tennessee? Defensively, secondary now. They've had some struggles, okay? They've had some issues on the back end. We saw that multiple times last year. So imagine a world where Tennessee offensively kind of has that Florida hangover. They got a big win the weekend before, and they're kind of taking a second to get rolling. And then UTSA, once you know it, they're out to a 14-3 lead in the first quarter. At that point, Frank Harris is feeling himself. He's got some mojo now. Like, he's kind of in the zone now. And for Tennessee, if that secondary doesn't step it up and find a way to put a cap on the back end of that defense, and Joe Milton and company are sluggish to get this thing rolling, it's going to get very, very interesting. Another one where you're flipping through the channels and you're like, oh, shoot. This is a really good football game. It's a one-score game going in the fourth quarter. We got to make sure we're locked in here. Now, if Tennessee comes out and plays the way they're capable of playing, we won't even be talking about it. It'll be a JV special by the fourth quarter, and Tennessee will have their backups in. But there is a path there. There's a very real way where Tennessee could be on the ropes if UTSA comes out swinging and Tennessee has a little bit of a Florida hangover if they were to win that game before. So this will be a lot of fun. I'm excited to watch that one. This will be some of the best games in the country in the first month of the college football season. And again, we're just talking about weeks 1 through 4. We didn't even talk about October and November, so maybe we'll talk about that more in future live shows depending on how y'all respond to this. But a lot of sneaky games on the schedule. making sure we're all on the same page and we all get to experience those, be ahead of the game a little bit together. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.